Dallas, his handlers told him that Hurricane Flora had brought chaos to Cuba, and the mission to murder Castro had been aborted. He was given new orders.
He would be getting a job, just like he had at Riley. It was all set up in advance at this particular building known today as the Texas School Book Depository building.
In the weeks before the assassination, Lee was still able to confide in Judith, thanks to David Ferry.
He did manage to set up through the Mafia a special phone line using their racing telephone lines that they had between Miami and Dallas. And that was perfectly free. We didn't have to spend a nickel. During the 14 or 15 telephone calls that Lee and I exchanged, most of them to me, these calls lasting about an hour to an hour and 45 minutes, the tone of the conversations as time wore on got more and more desperate in a way. Lee was penetrating a ring that he had gotten introduced into by David Ferry and Clay Shaw, and Lee put on the robes of one who was interested in sincerely assassinating the president, and this was not ever the case in reality. It was pretty well known to me by just a little bit before the assassination that Dealey Plaza and the airport and the Trade Mart were the three sites that they were going to try and kill Kennedy. If they didn't get him at one, it'd be at one of the others. He didn't know that he might be at Dealey Plaza itself. He even told me the second last phone call we had that they might call him and ask him to go somewhere else at lunchtime or something. And the they I'm talking about became more and more indistinct to him because every time he met one or two of them, it was somebody he didn't know.
Kennedy's arrival in Dallas was now only 5 days away.
When Lee called me on Sunday, November 17th, this was a very harrowing call for me. I'm talking to a man who says, don't feel sorry for me. You've got to understand that this is fulfilling a dream. I might be able to save the president. And he said, that's worth dying for. He said, I'm not scared to die so much. I'm just scared about leaving my kids behind and they'll think maybe I did it because they're going to try to blame me. Now he's talking this way on Sunday. He had the idea that he never probably would have lived a long time because I said, you know, it's like an oak tree. You're just getting started in your life. And he said, no. He said, I'm like a lily. And he said, that's beautiful too. Okay. Anyway, he said, just please don't feel sorry for me. I might have a chance to save the president. And that was so important to him in every way.
On Wednesday, November 20th, 1963, Judith, frantic with worry, called Lee at his workplace, the Texas School Book Depository. He returned her call that evening from a payphone less than 38 hours before Kennedy's assassination.
Our last conversation that lasted over an hour and a half, Lee was trying to assure me that he was not alone and that there was at least one other person, perhaps two, that were involved with him in this matter who were trying to save the president. It's like one group is trying to kill and the other group is going to try to abort. But he made clear to me there wasn't any way that he could actually remove himself from the situation into which he had penetrated. He almost rejoiced that he had been able to penetrate it. It was something that fulfilled him in a way because it meant that he had fulfilled the function that he had always wanted to be, and that is somebody who might be able to make a tremendous difference if he could succeed somehow in saving the president. On the other hand, if he had removed himself, his wife, his little girl, his little baby, me, the people he loved, we would have been slaughtered. We would have been eliminated. And of course he would have died anyway. He was in too deep. He couldn't withdraw. It was too late. And then he said, if I stay, there'll be one less bullet fired at Kennedy. And my heart just turned over because I thought that was such a courageous thing to say. And then he said, you know, look at all the people who have kids. He said, you're smart and you love children. He says, please have children for me. Have babies. Please have babies for me. So I had 5. I had 5 babies. And he said that I can't go on right now. In the final minutes of our call, he gave me some of the concerns he had. The most he had been able to find out that there was a connection between the assassination and persons whose names were Billy Celestes and Bobby Baker. Not that they were directly involved, but because of them. He said never to forget their names, and that this was a big event going on at that time in Dallas about them.
Bobby Baker was a corrupt business associate of Vice President Lyndon Johnson. So was Billy Celestes. Investigations into their financial misdealings were threatening to put Johnson behind bars.
And then he said, you know how we've tried and worried about who in the world my handler was. Mr. B, Mr. Bishop or Benson or whatever, Benton. He said, I think it's David Atlee Phillips. He said, and I don't want you to forget it. He said, you've got to remember that name.
Phillips was a high-ranking CIA official in Mexico City in charge of covert action at the time of Oswald's visit there. His connections to the assassination have long been suspected.
And then he told me goodbye. And we were both crying. And I told him I'd never forget him as long as he lived. And he said that might be only until tomorrow. He could crack jokes right to the end. Of course, I meant it as long as I lived. So that's the way it was. And I wondered how I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And I knew if I said a word, it could be so dangerous for him. And I just prayed to God he'd make it. And then he said, would you pray for me? And here he's an atheist, and I didn't believe in God anymore either. So I said an Our Father with him. And he said, I love you, JFK. Hung up. That's all. That's it.
Less than 90 minutes after the assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested in the Oak Cliff district of Dallas for the murder of a policeman, J.D. Tippit. 12 hours later, he was charged with the murder of President Kennedy. That evening, Judith in Gainesville received a frantic call from David Ferry in New Orleans.
Dave said to me, you have to keep your mouth shut and your head down. He said, I know you're an emotional person. He said, I'm an emotional person. He started really losing it a little bit. And he said, everything's gone wrong. I'm really concerned that, maybe things won't go right, but you've just got to hold on to the hope that we're going to get him out of there. And he said, and I swear to you, I think he said, I swear on a stack of Bibles, or I swear on my life, I am going now. I'm going to go all the way to Houston. I'm going to drive all the way there, go to that little airport at Alief, pick him up, and we'll go over to Hull Field. He'll get on the plane there, and he said, my boys will drive my car back to New Orleans, and I'll fly him to Laredo. Even he said, even if Lee didn't make it to Alief, even so, he'd be able to find out what was really going to happen to Lee because he had so many contacts. And just trust him and hang on and keep my mouth shut. And then he slammed the phone down.
On the morning of Sunday, November 24th, Oswald was to be moved from the Dallas City Jail, where he had been kept since his arrest, to the greater security of the county jail. The event was televised across the nation. In Florida, Judith was watching.
As I watched, and I'm thinking, they're transferring him. I knew he hadn't made it to the airport. He's been accused of killing the president. And I'd seen over and over again some of the press conferences and things, and I saw how much weight Lee had lost, and how thin he'd gotten. I saw the bruise on his eye and the cut on him, and I knew who knows how they're punching him, and the whole thing was, to me, I could see he was just being mauled around, and I knew he wasn't being treated right. So I was feeling horrible, And then I saw him come out, and he's got a nice black sweater on, and he's been shaved, and he looks nice. And my heart turned, and I thought, oh, at last they're going to treat him better. And then they shot him.
He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's a man with a gun. Absolute panic.
I think I don't know what happened to me. I don't remember anything for literally for hours after he was shot, and I was trying to see what happened, and my friend, I think, started to scream. I think I was crying, and I knew he was dead. For the first time and only time in my life, I wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to live anymore.
Almost 2 weeks after Lee's murder, Ferry called Judith from New Orleans for the last time, warning her she would die if she ever revealed what she knew.
He reminded me that the good friend of Godfather of New Orleans, who was Carlos Marcello, that good friend Santos Traficante, was watching to see how I was behaving, and that I'm to keep my mouth shut. And he also told me I could no longer expect to shine in any area. I'm not to have any more nice little news clippings or make straight A's or any of that, because I had to be a vanilla girl and be a nobody and keep my head down and make no waves if I wanted to stay alive. He abruptly ended the call, told me he could never contact me again. He told me that I was never to speak about any of this to anybody again, for all our own goods. And I never spoke to anybody about anything because I didn't want to die. No more science work, no more trying to help anybody, no more trying to cure cancer. Everything had gone wrong, everything. That's it.
Judith kept her secret for 40 years, but with her children grown up, she finally decided to break her silence before it was too late.
It's been a huge embarrassment to my family, to my children, a shock to them. I've always raised them to be very moral, and here their mother is saying that she was the mistress of an alleged assassin of the President of the United States. I want to make it clear that I'm making this statement at cost to me personally and to my family, but that it is the right thing to do because Lee Oswald is an innocent man, and my only and sole desire is to see his name cleared.